Oh boy, that was a horrible chess channel. Ah, thank goodness that's over with. Oh no! Rise Above Reality is truly someone who rose above reality. They shattered that glass ceiling so hard it fractured their skull and gave them permanent brain damage. Now, I do believe that ChessTube 3 is the worst chess channel on YouTube. The videos are awful, however, their videos only have 100 views. So the damage was very minimal, which is, you know, a good sign. There is no place on chess YouTube for slop. And then there's all this. 715,000 views. Which, by the way, I don't see improvement videos reach these numbers. Unless they're made by Batman Chess, you don't get this many views. So who is Rise Above Reality? Rise Above Reality is someone who makes guides to getting good at something. You might be thinking, oh, that is so useful. He's probably good at like one or two things and just makes videos on improvement in those areas. That is fantastic. Oh, no, no, no. You don't understand. He is good at everything. A guide to crypto. Learn to code fast. A guide to boxing. Why are you so easy to manipulate? It's a good question to ask your viewers. A guide to YouTube automation. That's not foreshadowing if I've ever seen it. And also how to actually get better at chess. No BS guide. Which is maybe one of, if not the worst chess improvement video I've seen in my life. So let's watch it.
So, you want to get better at chess and you're tired of the same generic advice like analyze your games and do puzzles. A ton of puzzles. Yeah.
5 seconds in and he's already declared war on everyone. What do you mean don't do puzzles? Are you tired of people telling you that to improve at chess you need to do puzzles? Well, so am I. That's the premise of this video, really. Like one of the most useful ways to improve at chess. Okay, this is great. This is a good start.
Puzzles are super important because they help you spot patterns and get faster at finding tactics. But they're not the only thing that'll level up your game. In this video, I've put together 8 strategies that helped me.
Wait, I really like that he tried to censor the images, but you can clearly read them. Build in an opening repertoire. Always ask yourself what your opponent is threatening. Clearly read this. This feels like one of those colorblindness tests.
I've put together 8 strategies that helped me break 2,000 on chess.com. And you can start.
Wait, whoa. Is this guy serious? Wait, sorry. This is his all-time graph, isn't it? This helped him break 2,000. You know what this graph looks like? Someone made a new account and they went, yeah, I'm an advanced player. And then they won like 2 or 3 games and then they reached 2100 and then like, yeah, I've done it. Not only talk about the fact that this could happen by fluke, you can probably get away with just cheating 2 games, like your first 2 games like this, and then being like, yep, I'm above 2000, I did it. This person's not rated 2000, is he? No graph looks like this. You know what a graph looks like of someone who reached 2k? This is what a graph like that looks like. A bit bubbly, you know, that's just playing games. It's a bubbly curve. This is simply not what that looks like. This is one game. What is this?
And you can start using them right away to actually improve your play, whether you're just starting out or you've been stuck at the same rating for months. Building an opening repertoire.
So he's gonna give us tips on how to actually improve at chess. Let's see what he has to share.
When you're starting to build an opening repertoire, you don't need to
Wait, sorry, what was that? Openings. Also, what is this opening repertoire? Alekhine's defense, Benko gambit. Benoit defense. Guys, I played the Benoit defense. Does he mean the Benoni? I played the 4 knights again. Also, by the way, what is this supposed to illustrate? Because like some of these, learn the Budapest gambit, Bengo, Benoit defense. This suggests to me that they're a d4 player. And then you have stuff like the Athens gambit and the 4 knights game, the French defense. And that suggests to me that they're a e4 player. So I have no idea why you would study all of these. The Vienne game. The weight defense. I think that's an actual opening. I think it's a line in the birch. No. E4, D6, and everything. This is the... Why would you need to learn this? This is the least comprehensible opening repertoire I've seen in my life.
You don't need to memorize every single line out there. Trying to cram all that info into your head will just mess you up. Okay. What I recommend is way simpler and actually works. Just prepare responses to the most common moves your opponent might play and stick to those.
This is horrible advice. Am I interpreting this right? Is he saying to people, just learn the main line? This is not really how you learn an opening though, is it? I'm not entirely opposed to the advice. I will say though, if you learn an opening and you just learn it by learning the main line, you're not learning anything from that, right? So let's say you play against the Sicilian, my beloved, and you know that the main line against the dragon is takes. Now it's knight f6, knight c3, pawn g6, bishop e3, bishop g7, and you move the juicer to the juicer, and when the juicer goes there, then the juicer goes here, etc. Does that mean we understand anything about this opening? No, absolutely not. Why not? Let's do a little test, okay? So black is a Sicilian dragon player. Why can't we play pawn g6? The main line, if you study the main line, is pawn up, pawn takes pawn, knight takes back, knight moves out, pawn up, bishop out, pawn up. So why do we bother attacking this pawn? Why don't we play g6, bishop g7 in one go? The answer, if you're interested, is because now white gets to play c4. Why is that remotely important? Why is c4 an issue? Here is what people mean when they say don't learn an opening, try and learn ideas. c4 is an issue. In these Sicilian pawn structures, a very important resource that black has is the pawn break with d5. In fact, in the main line that we just showed, after all of this is displayed, the main line here, after long castles, is for black to play pawn to d5. So going back here, why is this an issue? d5 is a harder line to get in. It's very good to at least understand why certain moves are being played. Or here, another very common one. And this one is a bit more popular. Why do we play f3 here? If the idea is queen d2 and castles, why do we bother with f3? After queen d2, there's now the move knight g4. Oops. If I look at the Lichess player base, most people castle. And as a matter of fact, people figured out that instead of long castling, the critical approach is actually bishop c4 to prevent that d5 pawn break. So don't just look at the main line. If you're gonna study an opening, I think it's a good thing to do. Just don't buy a course on it. I think it's a bit of a waste of money. But if you're gonna study an opening, don't just learn the main line.
As white, you've got a few options, like 1e3, 1g3, or 1c4. But the most popular openings are 1e4 and 1d4. Usually, 1e4 leads to more open games, while 1d4 tends to create more positional setups. So try to go with an opening that fits your style.
I'm a boring d4 player. I only play positional chess. I see. My opponent is deploying the King's Indian, an opening where they give me a space advantage over here at the center of the board and on the queen side. But they're gonna use their king side pawns to try and open lines against my king, which might castle that way, while their king also stays over there to start an attack against me. Meanwhile, I have to counterattack on the queen side. Very boring positional chess. My opponent has achieved open lines against my king, and they're gonna start launching an attack on the king side. Meanwhile, I need to make sure that I can defend against this. The current threat, because they've pinned the pawn over here, is to play bishop takes h3. Afterwards, they're threatening an attack, and the queen can infiltrate into my position and go for checkmate. So I have to play into h1. They can't sacrifice on h3 because the attack is too slow. But after king h1, they do have bishop g4, which is a counterattack against my queen. If I take and they take, they're threatening the mate into with queen h4, queen h2. So I need to play g3 to keep it out. After bishop g4, pawn takes, knight takes, pawn g3, queen e8, I can play queen g2, queen g6. Here I have to move knight takes c5 now that the bishop is defended and is counterattacking my queen. However, then they have pawn f3, queen takes f3 must be necessary, otherwise I'm going to get mated on the h file. But this means that my bishop is heading me, then they can just take the bishop for free, but then I can take on h6. Now coordinating my knight, queen, and bishop, I can start a counterattack against the black king, which has been weakened because of they pushing all of these kinside pawns. So now it's a matter of fact whose attack is quickest, who will survive. This is a very slow and boring positional game. I have no idea what this is all about. I'm sorry, but it's just complete nonsense. e4 leads to open positions. I agree that e4, e5 tends to lead to open positions, because usually center breaks come really quickly. And then there are of course also the semi-open games, right, like the Caro-Kann or the Sicilian. There are also some very closed positions, like in the French advanced variation.
Now let's talk about what not to do in the opening. Don't move the same piece multiple times.
Okay, let's set up a position for my beloved Sicilian defense. Knight f3, knight c6, they play the open Sicilian, and we play this move pawn e5. Now of course here you move the same piece. I doubt anyone has a problem with it, considering it's under attack, right? So that's not really the example. So let's say d6, knight c3, and here the main line is a6. But let's say they play knight over here. Now bishop g5, bishop e7. Following the advice of not moving the same piece twice in the opening, what would be your candidate move? You'd probably move this bishop, which is simply just not a good move here. Like to show you, the position right now is plus 1.6. Here it's about equal. Because in a position like this, the placement of your pieces is in informed by strategic considerations. Why is your bishop on g5? Well, to undermine this knight over here. Why are we undermining the knight over there? Well, because it's a key defender of d5, which is a hole in black's position. So what we want to do is we want to play knight d5. Right now we can't. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to move the same piece twice. Bishop takes knight. Now they can't take back with this bishop, because the pawn on d6 is hanging. And after they take, we need to move the same piece twice in the opening, knight to d5. By the way, if you're curious, aren't we just blundering a knight over here? Not entirely true, we can simply block the check. This knight can't be taken because of the fork. Not only are we moving the same piece twice in the opening, we're doing that twice in a row. And we're completely winning. Now listen, I think dogmatic advice to an extent is great. Like if you're a coach and you see your student play something like, I don't know, pawn d3, pawn d6, and now knight g5, I'm so smart. And yeah, tell them like, it's a bit pointless to move the same piece twice in the opening. Probably better to just push a pawn, develop a piece or castle. That being said, if you're making a guide for people on how to improve, I think it's a lot better to teach them what they should be playing for in the opening. Like for example, what is the difference between moving the same piece twice in this variation as opposed to in this position? I would say two things. First of all, we're exploiting a positional weakness in black's position, the d5 square. Second of all, we are playing in the center of the board. That is more so what we're supposed to be doing in the opening rather than only move your pieces once. The center is just a fundamentally important thing to chess that is also pretty easy to explain to beginners, as opposed to the previous example where we have easier moves that control the center. Pawn c3 for example prepares d4, or knight to c3 controls central squares.
Don't push too many pawns.
Another bad piece of advice. Back to the board. So we're gonna talk about my beloved Sicilian again. We're gonna discuss the Sicilian dragon variation this time. Ooh, one of the best named openings in all of what did I just do? Okay, knight f6, knight c3, pawn g6. There we go. So, what is one of the best lines against the dragon? Well, it's the Yugoslav attack, right? So, bishop g7, pawn f3, short castles, queen d2, knight c6. As we've previously said, pawn d5 is, of course, what happens if you castle long. But let's say your opponent makes a bit of a strategic slip-up. They play the move bishop d7. As you can see, the computer not really that impressed by that move. How do you prove the advantage? If you just play, I don't know, relatively normal, you kind of just do nothing. A6, and you continue centralizing, and just like this, our advantage has disintegrated. It was about +1, and now it's +0.4, and we've done everything. We've centralized our pieces, we've completed development, and we've brought our king to safety. So what went wrong? Well, simply put, in a position like this, you need to, and I mean you need to attack. Why? You're castled on opposite sides, meaning it's very easy to push pawns and open lines. If you were castled on the same side of the board, so let's say something like this, here pushing these pawns is a lot more risky because you're exposing your king. And for what we have here, pushing these pawns doesn't come at any cost to your king safety. Same for black. Pushing these pawns doesn't come at any cost of the king safety. And why would we want to push these pawns? Well, if we push these pawns through, eventually we're going to open up the position and then we can transfer our pieces to start an attack. Aha! Meaning here to prove your advantage, you need to start playing with your pawns. Say rook c8, h4, pawn a6, h5. And here look, we're completely winning. Why? Because we push some pawns, we open lines, and now our attack is super quick. So in a position like this, not pushing pawns before you've completed development is horrible advice.
Don't take the queen out too early.
So setting up another position. This is something I know from the Queen's Gambit declined. It's actually from the semi-Slav. So let's say bishop g5, and that's the orthodox defense with knight bd7. So let's say pawn e3 makes sense. Hey, look at the main line, queen a5. Now you don't have to play queen a5. The thing is though, this is just a good move. Why is this a good move? First of all, we're focusing on this bishop here. Of course, it is protected, right? Don't get me wrong. But there are times where there are tactical motives with the bishop coming here and then both bishops heading after this capture. Like if you want to see a funny way to lose, like pawn h3, here we already have knight e4, exploiting the spin. And this gets very dangerous very quickly for white. Like here I presume you can play like bishop b4. Look at this beautiful position. Why? Well, because we moved our queen. We didn't have to do this, we could have played bishop e7. But moving the queen in the opening isn't a problem. What is a problem is if we're moving the queen, and Scandinavian defense is of course completely fine, but I'm taking it as an example. It's a problem to move the queen out when it can be easily attacked. Another example, this is from the Alapin Sicilian. Here one of the main lines is pawn d5, and if you take, and we're gonna take back with the queen. Why? There's a pawn on c3, meaning the queen can't get kicked. Even if it's sometimes chased out eventually, it is not a bad placed piece here at all. Like here, queen f3 is a bad move because it takes away a natural development square from the knight.
And don't make pointless moves.
Once again, horrible advice. How can I say that that's horrible advice though? Isn't it fundamentally good not to make pointless moves? That is true. However, I will point out, there is no golden rule to figure out which move is pointless. Because here pawn to a3, I would agree with you if you called this pointless. That being said though, it is not a move that does nothing. It's a pawn move. It's per definition quite committal. And what does this move do? Well, it controls the b4 square. It also, I guess, arguably weakens the b3 square a little bit. Though I will say that is a weird argument to make, but you understand my point, I hope. So explaining to beginner don't play pawn a3 because it's pointless feels a bit weird, doesn't it? Like if this is a very serious candidate move for someone, just telling them no, it's pointless, doesn't help them understand what they're doing. Also, if you go through, let's click on the first move, the entire way through. Like you play the move king to h1. Explaining to them is that it's a pointless move and therefore bad feels a bit stupid. Because if someone plays king h1 and it's an actual human, they probably had an idea. Maybe they were thinking about pushing the f-pawn without allowing some sort of check to come in. I do not know. And I will also add, knowing what move is useful requires a lot of chess knowledge. Like if I just go on over here. Here the main move is knight to b3. And here look, what's the second move? Pawn to a3. Is this a pointless move? Well, Vishwanath and Anand played it, so I doubt it was pointless. Because pawn a3 doesn't particularly strike to me as the most useful move of all time. We're talking about positional concepts, meaning that per definition they require a lot of chess skill to understand.
Always ask yourself what your opponent is threatening. One of the most common mistakes is only focusing on your own moves without thinking about what your opponent is trying to do. After every move your opponent makes, you should always ask yourself, what is the purpose of this move? Maybe they're setting up a pawn break, or maybe there's a tactical threat coming. If you can figure out their plan, you'll be way better prepared to deal with it.
I kinda hate the examples he showed. I don't think that understanding the purpose of queen h7 helps you deal with it better. If I say, oh yes, my opponent plays queen h7, what is the point? Well, I only can take, and then it's checkmate. Yes, now I'm better prepared of dealing with it. What? Like, I'm sorry, this is just forced checkmate. Whether you understand that or not has no consequence of the rest of the game.
So, let's say your opponent opens with 1 e4. You reply with 1 e5. Both of you develop your pieces, and then they suddenly play queen to h5. If you don't stop and ask yourself, why did they bring the queen out so early? You might ignore the threat, and you get hit with the scholar's mate. And obviously, you don't want that.
Now, I'm gonna demonstrate to you how bad this reasoning is. And the advice is solid. Like, of course, keep in mind your opponent's threats. So let's say you play the bishop's opening. Now, the opponent goes queen g5. Now, if you ask a beginner, what's the point of this move? They'll be looking at this pawn. And they'll think, oh, the point of it is they want to attack this pawn. So what should I be doing? Oh, I should defend. And as you can see, this is not correct. So what you're supposed to do here, knight f3. You let them take. Rook g1, queen h3. And now they have a little tactic. Bishop f7. King takes, knight g5. Oops. While I fundamentally agree that after every move it's worth asking what are they doing, that is really only half the necessary skill. What a lot of people here would be doing is they would be observers. They would say, my pawn is hit, I should do something about that, which is an observational skill, and that is important. And it would tell me that you're probably already rated above like 600, right? If you play a move like queen f3 because you see the pawn is hanging. Over that being said, the way you improve at chess is not just by pure observational skills. You also need to analyze what you're observing. Okay, they're attacking my pawn. The opening is not the time to go for random pawn hunts. So what happens after knight f3? And then you figured out knight f3, queen g2, rook g1, queen h3. Hey, we're getting a lot of development, even if you don't immediately see bishop f7. So yes, ask yourself, what is my opponent threatening? But that is really not the end-all be-all of chess improvement. They're going after this pawn. So, you're an idiot. That's what you are.
Master clock timing.
Oh boy, I sure curious how they're gonna teach me how to master clock timing.
Ever lost a winning position because you ran out of time? We all have. In chess, even the most brilliant idea is worthless if you don't have the time to play it. Whether
Fully agreed. Now, how do I master clock timing?
Whether you're in bullet, blitz, or rapid, bad clock management turns winning positions into heartbreaking losses. So how do you fix it? Start by not overthinking the obvious.
Don't overthink the obvious. You know, like captures, which we all know captures are something that can easily be done without a good reason.
Play your openings quickly.
Also bad. Above the rating of 1600, you know what the most common played move is in this position? Knight takes e5, which is a horrible move. Like, of course, if they're playing a line that you know by heart, you shouldn't think about it. But that's not something that anyone needs to be told. Yes, I've played against this opening approximately 60,000 times, and I've always played knight f3. However, should I still do that? No one does that.
Utilize opponent's turn to think about your strategy.
I agree it's important to utilize your opponent's time well. That being said, I would recommend, generally just an idea, to have an idea of what your strategy is before you move. You know, food for thought.
And save the deep calculation for the middle game.
And finally, we have some good advice.
Learn the coordinates. Every square on a chessboard has a specific coordinate. The files are labeled A through H, and the ranks go from 1 to 8. Pretty simple, right? But the vast majority of players underestimate how important it is to fully internalize this system.
Okay, guys, just me showing my rebellious flair. I'm not gonna use the coordinates anymore. I'm gonna switch in this video to old-timey notation. If I say, let's play the Grob opening, I don't say, let's play pawn g4. No. I'm gonna say king's knight pawn to king's knight 4, just to rub it in a bit.
Goal is to recognize squares instantly, knowing that this square is c5.
Don't you mean queen's bishop 5?
And that 1 is f4 is crucial.
Don't you mean king's bishop 4?
Because it boosts your spatial vision.
Because it literally makes you super...
Counterattack and don't be passive. Let me give you an example so you can see exactly what I mean. Let's say your opponent tries a lever attack. In this position...
Sorry, what?
Let's say your opponent tries a lever attack.
A lever attack?
It's a lever attack.
A lever attack? Does he mean the fried liver attack? Okay, sure, what about the lever attack?
In this position, the classic response is to play pawn to d5, and after he capture, you play knight to a5, attacking the bishop.
Sorry, knight to what?
You play knight to a5.
I take it back, maybe he does need to practice his coordinates. Knight to a5. I think your LLM broke there, buddy.
Attacking the bishop. But if you want to counterattack, I suggest bishop to c5.
Wait, I'm sorry, is he insinuating that queen's pawn to queen 4 and queen's knight to rook 4 aren't aggressive moves? Okay, so setting up the fried liver. So this is called, of course, the lever attack. So what happens here? Well, in short, we don't take back, right? This would be a trade of pawns. However, here, there's this knight sacrifice. Knight takes f7. Whole point is, yes, you're up material. It's really hard to keep this knight because the king has to go into the center. And here you just simply have more than enough compensation. In fact, I would say that if you don't win from this position 3 out of 5 times, you probably misunderstand something about chess from the white perspective. So okay, we don't take back. Instead we play queen's knight to queen's rook 4. They give a check, we block, and then we trade. What has happened in this position? First, material. White is up a pawn, but the position is about equal. Wait a minute, if white is up a pawn, shouldn't the position be better for white? Because this is not an aggressive opening, I've been told. This is an incredibly aggressive opening for black. In fact, black gets a lot of dynamic compensation for the pawn. What is black's compensation? Well, mostly open lines and a slight lead in development, because this bishop's gonna have to move again. We're gonna continue developing, and we can use the open lines to start an attack. This is an incredibly sharp opening, and I don't really understand why they're talking about this as an example of being passive.
But if you want to counterattack, I suggest bishop to c5.
Isn't the traxor just a bit of a bad opening? I think it's not recommended to take with the knight, but you can take with the bishop.
Now the best move for your opponent is bishop takes f7, but most players will go for knight takes f7 because they'll be tempted by the fork on the...
So what you're telling me is don't play the main lines, instead play slightly dubious sidelines that are trappy. Okay, very good.
But being able to recognize the right moment to take the initiative and punish every inaccurate move of the opponent.
Oh, great advice. If you just do the thin and you play perfect, then you'll win. Thank you. Thank you so much.